Nancy Pelosi a couple days ago made the argument that the left cannot win the presidency, that Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren running on the policies they're currently running on and the way they're running on them will not be able to win the Electoral College. And Pelosi says, look at me, I'm a left-wing liberal from San Francisco, and I know that their plan won't appeal to people in places like Michigan. Michigan, of course, being a state that the Democrats lost in 2016 and will be essential to their victory in 2020 should it happen. But I want you guys to know that Nancy Pelosi has no idea what she's talking about. None at all. Nancy Pelosi, lest we forget, was part of the Democratic leadership that ran in 2016. And they had this same mindset that they needed to run to win moderate Republicans. That if they could control the center-right platform, they could win the presidency because those respectable center-right voters would come to them and they wouldn't go to Trump. And what we actually found out is that those people remain loyal to Trump, and people, rightly or not, felt they were abandoned by upper-class Democrats who were seen as ignoring the concerns of regular working-class people, in part because they tried not to sound like they were socialists. This idea that, one, Nancy Pelosi is a leftist is laughable. Nancy Pelosi is a very, very wealthy woman from a very, very wealthy community. And while there are liberal leanings in places like San Francisco, it's not exactly a bastion of socialism. It's not exactly a bastion of leftism. And what we can actually see is that what liberals see as socialism is actually very, very popular. Nancy Pelosi in this article rejects Medicare for all. She won't commit to a wealth tax. She won't cap CEO pay. But these ideas are very popular. They're very popular with working class people, the diverse working class, not just white working class people, but working class people of all backgrounds. And those people are vital to victory in those key swing states. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, even Ohio potentially, and on and on and on. Those states need a democratic socialist message rooted in economic equality, justice, and dignity for all. And there's really only one candidate that's offering that on all fronts, and that's Bernie Sanders. But we could even throw at Elizabeth Warren on a lot of individual policy pieces and say that she's moving in the right direction. And for Nancy Pelosi to effectively fight against two of the party's three leading frontrunners in the primary is really, really irresponsible. Basically, what she's saying in this is you shouldn't support Bernie Sanders and you shouldn't support Elizabeth Warren because their socialist agenda is unelectable in the American heartland. But if we look at the data, we know one thing is for certain. Bernie Sanders' message of economic justice, of worker ownership, of taxing the rich, of providing every American citizen basic health care, of providing every American citizen a decent education. These things are popular, and they're not just popular with Democrats. Some of these issues are often popular with Republicans. Because here's the thing, for so long, neither party has represented working people and their interests. And this is not me saying the Republicans and Democrats are equally bad. We know that's not true. The Democrats are better. But they've not really gone to the mat for workers in any significant way for more than a couple generations now. And in fact, they've often sided against workers and with big capital, much in the same way Republicans do. So there's a lot of Republican voters who actually don't know what a democratic socialist agenda looks like, because for them, socialism has been vilified, both by the Fox News crowd, but also by Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and people like them. Everybody's decried socialism, except for Bernie Sanders. And when they actually hear what socialism is, when they hear that it's about economic democracy and universal human dignity, they like it. They like it a lot. And they're excited to hear about it. Remember when Bernie Sanders went on Fox News and he spoke to a room of Fox News listening Republicans? And he flipped that crowd. Remember when Bernie Sanders went to West Virginia? Go check out this video by David Dole. It just came out a little bit ago. David shares this great clip from where Bernie goes to West Virginia and he talks to regular West Virginians, including a guy who fits the kind of blue-collar working class stereotype. And that man makes it very clear that no American should go without health care. Not a single one. And that's a clear message for Medicare for all. And Bernie Sanders' message goes beyond the elite bastions of American liberalism in New York and Chicago and Southern California and what have you. It goes beyond those places into working class communities of all colors, of all shapes, of all religions, of all persuasions. It really does. And in some ways, it speaks to those groups outside of the liberal elite bubble more so. Those people have healthcare. Those people have wealth. Those people have opportunity. Their economies haven't been ruptured to the same degree. So for Nancy Pelosi, maybe she doesn't think this will appeal because for her constituents, it isn't the same sort of issue that it is for many of the people in former industrial centers and industrial centers that are currently in transition and deindustrialization, where the economic and social and political and cultural effects have been disastrous. And Bernie Sanders has traveled this country, and he knows that working class people of all backgrounds are struggling, and they're looking for justice and they're looking for dignity. That is what Bernie Sanders' manifestation of democratic socialism is all about, providing that justice and dignity. Nancy Pelosi doesn't get that. Or more accurately, let's be real, Nancy Pelosi fully understands what Bernie Sanders is trying to do, and she fully understands that it can and will appeal to working class people who currently vote Republican or Democrat, and in many cases who don't vote at all because they don't feel there's anyone worth voting for. She knows all that, but she still doesn't want Bernie Sanders to be the nominee. She might not even really want Elizabeth Warren if she can avoid it, unless it's to stop Bernie Sanders. She wants another traditional business elite Democrat like Joe Biden or maybe Pete Buttigieg to become the nominee and to give Americans no choice. Because Nancy Pelosi, of course, doesn't want to see Donald Trump win, but Donald Trump winning for Nancy Pelosi is much more of a status quo, and it's much more of a protection of her elite status than Bernie Sanders or even Elizabeth Warren winning. And so she wants to avoid Americans realizing there's an alternative to the Republican Party on the one hand and center-right neoliberal Democrats on the other. Bernie Sanders has shown in this contest that if his vision was just about New York and, urban and college-educated and young elites, then he wouldn't be raising money hand over fist the most in the country and the most in terms of geographic distribution. If you look at who raises the most money, it's Bernie. If you look at who gets small donors, it's Bernie. And if you look at who raises money for the Democrats in non-traditional areas spread out fairly evenly across the entire United States, it's Bernie. And that shows that Bernie's vision, it's not just downtown New York. This idea that AOC and the squad only appeal to the urban elites is BS. Because if that was the case, they wouldn't be the national and international figures they are right now. Bernie Sanders has the only vision, the only one that can actually appeal to the working masses of the United States in a way that will energize them in a manner that has not been seen since the New Deal. That's what's at stake right now. And if Nancy Pelosi can't see that, then she's a terrible politician. And if she can see that, which I think she can, then she's misleading the Democratic Party, she's misleading the media, and she's misleading the voters, all because at the end of the day, it's not that she thinks socialism can't win, it's that she doesn't want it to win.